the last weeks. So I need to be able to
Can anybody hear me, please?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Thank you.
Okay, so let me find my bearings here. Okay. Oh, here we are. So, yeah, we started off with, you should all know this off by heart now. I've been through it so many times. We started off with the introduction. Prabhupada gave that introduction in, I think it was Conway Hall, or some hall in London. And it was proving the validity of the Vedas. That's the Isopanisad, a part of the Vedas. Then in the invocation, he established the position of the absolute truth as a person, Supreme Personality of Godhead. Ampurnamadapunnam is complete. And so therefore personality should be there as well. Everything within his creation should, and everything within his creation and everything beyond our conception is included in the absolute truth. So personality is part of that. Then we went on to the first 3 verses, mantras, and we said that and when once we've established the absolute truth, then everything should be done for his benefit or for according to his will. And the results of doing that is that, we make progress. And the results of failing to do that means that we actually commit sins, and therefore it degrades us. Then the next 5 verses. He talks about different types of devotees, Kinista, Maha, Madhyam, and Uttama Adhikari. And it says that the highest is called the Uttama Adhikari, and he sees everything in relationship to the Supreme Lord. And he's also called a Maha Bhagavat. So, how he sees the Supreme Lord, how he sees the world, what is his vision of a topmost devotee. So that's what we're aiming to actually achieve. And then it changes the subject from 9 to 11. It talks about the absolute and relative knowledge. Relative knowledge is knowledge which is about the material world, and it's relative because it's always changing. But the absolute knowledge never changes. And so the idea in society, human society, is to educate people in absolute knowledge so they can reach the absolute goal, and not in temporary knowledge, which by virtue of understanding that we return to the path of repeated birth and death. And it also explains that sometimes relative knowledge is described as is actually camouflaged as absolute knowledge. So anybody know the animal in relationship to this? It's a snake. You remember a jewel on a cobra's snake, on a cobra's head. It's very, very attractive, you know, diamond, but it's very dangerous. So modern education is like that. It sounds very nice, but actually it's ignorance. It's taking us into material life again. You know, killing our spiritual life, just like we're killed if we try to take the jewel from the cobra. 12, 13, 14. There's another explanation. It says that when the relatives of a dead person, they take him on, in India especially, they decorate the body very nicely. But what's the point? You know, there's no point. It's dead. There's no benefit. So this is the same with modern educational knowledge. It's not beneficial. It has no real value. It has value if we can use it in such a way as to maintain our healthy condition in life in order to practice spiritual life. Then it becomes useful. Prayers for the revelation of the Lord's spiritual form and mercy at the time of death. So the prayers for his revelation was in 15 and 16. He removes his Hiranmaya, his golden effulgence. This is like the Brahmajyoti, or impersonal understanding. We've got to go beyond the impersonal understanding of the absolute truth. The absolute truth is a person, and so the devotee is asking to understand that, and for God to reveal himself to the devotee. And that comes by the mercy of another devotee. We can't approach the Supreme without that mercy. And then the last two is about the, the 17 is about remembering Krishna at death. And the last one is what we're doing today, is remembering, you know, what can stop us from remembering Krishna at that time is reactions to past inappropriate activities which cover the conditioned soul. So we need the mercy of the Lord to actually clear up all this residual reactions. So we'll start with that. Just go down to 18 again. There we are. So, Jai Krishna, Prabhu, do you want to read?
Yeah, I'll go.
So, wait a minute. Are we, do you want to see the, did I disable the screen share? Let's have a look.
Yeah, you want to put it on.
There you go.
It is.
Carry on.
Do you want to do the Sanskrit, Maharaj?
Yeah, okay.
I could do it, but I don't know the tune.
Yeah. Agne Naya Supatnarayasman Vishpani Deva Vayunani Pidvam Yo Jasmat Jahuranam Eno Vayustam Te Nama Uktim Videmha.
Oh, my Lord, as powerful as fire, O omnipotent one, now I offer you all obeisances, falling on the ground at your feet, O my Lord. Please lead me on the right path to reach you, since you know all that I have done in the past. Please free me from the reaction to my past sins, so that there will be no hindrance to my progress. By surrendering to the Lord and praying for his causeless mercy, the devotee can progress on the path to complete self-realization. Expressed as fire, because he can burn anything into ashes, including the sins of the surrendered soul, as described in the previous mantras. The real or ultimate aspect of the Absolute is his feature as the personality of Godhead, and his impersonal Brahmajyoti feature is a dazzling covering over his face. Fruitive activities, or the Karmakanda path, self-realization, is the lowest stage in this endeavor. As soon as such activities even slightly deviate from the regulative principles of the Vedas, they are transformed into vikarma, or acts against the interests of the actor. Such vikarma is enacted by the illusioned living entity, simply for sense gratification, and thus such activities become hindrances on the path of self-realization. Shall I go on?
Yeah. Yeah, you can. Well, we've got quite a few devotees here this week, so we'll just take it a bite at a time. There's
Okay.
not a lot of not too much to read actually.
Okay, I'll stop then.
Yeah, so just let me have a look at this. Yeah, so fire, it means that oh Lord, powerful as fire. So in the material world, fire is a purifying element. That, you know, when we want to purify something, we burn it, and it burns all the impurities. Like, anybody got any examples? I was thinking it's not a very good example, but at least it is an example. It's like, you know, in cowboy films. You know, we shouldn't be really talking about cowboy films, but anyway, it's part of the material. We have to fully understand the material world. So, it's, you know, when somebody got shot, they would actually get the knife out and stick it in a flame, wouldn't they? Has anybody seen that? They would hold it over a flame and then they'd actually operate. And so that kills all the impurities. And when, you know, I used to live in Rotherham. You know, this is the real steel city in the north. And what they would do in order to, when, you know, this is where the blast furnaces were, and they were about a mile away from where I used to live. And what they would do, they get iron ore, they dig it out of the ground, and it means it's full of impurities, and then they take it to the top of the blast furnace and drop it into some bell cones, and then one by one it open, and eventually it would drop into the furnace itself, and the heat of the furnace would melt the ore, and all the impurities would float to the top of the, you know, so you'd have metal and the impurities would come stop. Then they'd actually tap the furnace and run all the molten metal out and stop it before the impurities ran out. And then in the other, you know, further up the valley in Sheffield, they would actually temper it. In other words, they put it through different heating processes to purify it even further. And Prabhupada used the word unalloyed. Anybody remember that? Unalloyed devotional service. So alloy means a mixture of metals. So they would add different, you know, titanium and other metals to that steel, and then they'd, you know, to give it a certain quality which you could use in different industries. So yes, and the main thing was fire. So fire is the fire of repentance, they sometimes say, don't they? Fire burning in the heart. So here it's relating to this particular point. And so Agni means fire. Okay. So who wants to read next? Is Sita Thakurani. Not to read.
I think she's driving, Maharaj,
Oh,
so can't
okay.
read. She's listening in.
Okay, so Mayapur Chandradaya. Oh. You're
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Okay. Self-realization is possible in the human form of life, but not in other forms. There are 8,400,000 species or forms of life, of which the human form qualified by Brahminical culture presents the only chance to obtain knowledge of transcendence. Brahminical culture includes truthfulness, sense control, forbearance, simplicity, full knowledge, and full faith in God. It is not that one simply becomes proud of his high parentage, just as being born the son of a big man affords one a chance to become a big man, so being born the son of a Brahmana gives one a chance to become a Brahmana. But such a birthright is not everything, for one still has to attain the Brahminical qualifications for himself. As soon as one becomes proud of his birth as the son of Brahmana and neglects to acquire the qualifications of a real Brahmana, he at once becomes degraded and falls from the path of self-realization. Thus his life's mission as a human being is defeated.
Yeah, so this brings up the point of humility. That, you know, this 18th chapter is like the humility of the devotee. And that humility, why is a senior devotee seen as being more humble than a junior devotee? You would think that, you know, knowledge in this world makes one feel some esteem for oneself, that, you know, or makes us feel that we've actually achieved something. But actually, that's not the fact. Is that everything we achieve is by the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And especially on the path of devotional service, is that gradually, step by step, we start to realize how insignificant we are and how ineffectual we are. That we're actually completely dependent on Krishna giving us the ability to do anything. And so that brings a sense of, in the beginning, it may give a sense of feeling useless unless we understand the philosophy properly. And that's why we, you know, that's why we understand, that's why we read these books, so that we see that as actually mercy, that Krishna's taken away our false prestige. And when the false prestige is actually taken away, then we can start to have real prestige. You know, they would say to Prabhupada, well, one devotee said to Prabhupada, in this picture, you're really proud. So it doesn't seem like a thing he would actually say to a spiritual master. And Prabhupada said, let me have a look. And when he showed it to me, he said, yeah, oh, yes. He said, I'm proud to be a devotee of Krishna. So that's a different kind of pride. But yeah, in the Bhagavad Gita, and also earlier on in the 14th mantra, I think it was. No, it was before that, actually. It was in the items of knowledge. In the 13th chapter, verses 8 to 12, it talks about what is actually knowledge and what is actually ignorance. And the first item of knowledge is humility. Without humility, it's very difficult to learn anything. And so Krishna's bringing us to that point when where we're humble and we're open, and then we can receive his mercy, then we can be grateful. So, you know, we may feel some tests and trials in devotional service, but, you know, Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, that's my greatest pleasure, because he knows that it's actually helping him to advance. Queen Kunti also prays the same in the prayers of Queen Kunti. And it's a small price to pay for the you know, the boon of being liberated from this world and engaging in pure devotional service to the Lord, attaining His kingdom. Okay, actually, we can attain that situation while we're in the present body. Hiya yasya harea dasya kamana manasagira nikalash bhavasta su jivan mukta uchites. Jivan means living entity. Mukta means liberation. So we're liberated even in the material world when we actually perform service to the Lord without any motivation. So a devotee can be liberated. He can be liberated from this world if he just follows the instructions of the spiritual master, because then he's acting on the same platform as the spiritual master. Although at that point in time his heart may not be completely pure, but it's pure enough for him to, you know, be intelligent enough to follow those instructions. Okay. I said one devotee asked Prabhupada, how many pure devotees do we have in the movement? This was in the early days. And Prabhupada said, how many devotees do we have in this movement? He says, that many pure devotees. And I was just listening to him speaking this morning. I was listening to a lecture, and he made the very same point. He said that devotees, even though they may not be free from all material contamination, just by following this process properly, they're actually liberated. Okay, so who's next to read? It's Barbara Matthews. Would you like to read?
I'm sorry, I can't tonight. I can't find my reading glasses,
Okay.
so I can't see properly through these distance ones, so sorry.
It's okay, don't worry. Let us know if you find them. Might be difficult because you ain't got them, you know.
I've lost about 3 pairs in a few months.
Hare Krishna. Okay, Jack Brew.
Right, yes, thank you. In the Bhagavad Gita 6:41-42, we are assured by the Lord that the yogi brihastas, or souls fallen from the path of self-realization, are given a chance to rectify themselves by taking birth either in the families of good brahmanas or in the families of rich merchants. Such births afford higher chances for self-realization. If these chances are misused due to illusion, one loses the good opportunity of human life afforded by the Almighty Lord.
Okay, thank you. Yes, so have we got anybody who's born in a Brahmin family here or a rich family? Actually, there can be disqualifications that we're born into a rich family, Srimatam. Then, you know, that wealth actually takes away our intelligence. And then there's a story of Sudama Brahman. He was actually completely renounced. And when Krishna gave him a benediction that, you know, wealth and prosperity, he became frightened because he knew that that would take away his position of being, you know, detached. So he prayed to the Lord to actually help him to remember his real position. Okay. So Brahma, so the point is when we put into that situation, we have to be careful. And the other one is the Suchinam. That's it. This is a Brahman. So we have to transcend the platform of Brahman and come to the platform of Vaishnava. So as I was saying earlier, Krishna has given us, our Prabhupada has given us that ability just by following his guidance in how to practice this process. Okay. Vibhu, do you want to read the next paragraph?
As far as thank you. The regulative principles are such that one who follows them is promoted from the platform of fruitive activities to the platform of transcendental knowledge. After many lifetimes of cultivating transcendental knowledge, one becomes perfect when he surrenders unto the Lord. This is the general procedure. But one who surrenders at the very beginning, as recommended in this mantra, at once surpasses all preliminary stages simply by adopting the devotional attitude. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita 18.66, the Lord at once takes charge of such a surrendered soul and frees him from all the reactions to his sinful acts. There are many sinful reactions involved in Karma Kand activities, whereas in Jnana Kand, the path of philosophical development, the number of such sinful activities is smaller. But in devotional service to the Lord, the path of bhakti, there is practically no chance of incurring sinful reactions because a devotee of the Lord attains all the good qualifications of the Lord himself. What to speak of those of a Brahmana? A devotee automatically attains the qualifications of an expert Brahmana authorized to perform sacrifices. Even though the devotee may not have been taken his birth in a Brahmana family. Such is the omnipotence of the Lord. He can make a man born in a Brahmana family as degraded as a low-born dog-eater, and he can also make a low-born dog-eater superior to a qualified Brahmana simply on the strength of devotional service.
Okay, thank you. Yashyastir Bhakti, this is in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Yashyastir Bhakti Bhagavatiya Krishna Savarganas Tatra Kutoma Ganama Sura Arava Bhaktasya Kutoma Hadgana Manoratanas Ratena Sati Davato Bahi. He says that one who practices devotional service, pure devotional service, he actually automatically develops all the good qualities of the demigods. So the demigods are devotees, that's the point. We develop devotional qualities. And a person who's actually expert in doing anything in this material world, if he doesn't develop any devotional qualities, then it's all zero. Why? Because he's just following his mind. He's not following any guidance. And therefore we follow the mind without any guidance, then the mind becomes an enemy. He said that in Bhagavad Gita, an uncontrolled mind is the enemy of a conditioned soul. The controlled mind is his friend. So once again, devotee surpasses all the other stages just by taking shelter of a bona fide spiritual master. In the Bhagavad Gita, in the 17th chapter, the Gita is actually finished in 16 chapters. But Arjuna asks a question because he says that, it's covered across of the path of Karma Kanda, which is mentioned here, Jnana Kanda, and he started to talk about Bhakti. And so in the end of the 16th chapter, it says, Ya Shastra Vidimushritya Vartate Kamakarata. What's the position of somebody who doesn't follow Shastra? And, the answer in the second part of the verse is that it doesn't get any good situation. Ya Shastra Vidimushritya Vartate Kamakarata. Nasa Siddhim, no perfection. Avatnoti. And Sukham, no happiness. So the next verse says, therefore, Tasmat Shastram Pramanam Te. One should follow the injunctions of the Shastra. And so Arjuna understands that. And then, but earlier in the Bhagavatam, in the 7th chapter, it's talking about if a person engages in a particular activity with full focus, he can achieve success. So he's a bit confused because it seems to be talking about anybody. And so Arjuna asks that anybody who, whatever he does, he can become successful. And so he inquires from Krishna about this apparent contradiction. So it's what happens to a person who doesn't follow Shastra but faithfully practices his particular process. And ultimately, Krishna replies by saying it's completely useless. He says the modes of nature affect the mind, and therefore we act in according to the pushings and pullings of the heart and the mind, then we act in a certain way. So we're just working in the modes of nature. And it says it's not possible to get out of these modes ultimately unless we take shelter of a bona fide spiritual master. And step by step, he can actually relieve us from the influence of these modes. He can help us to purify the heart and focus in devotional service. So Krishna makes that point right at the end. In other words, whatever we do, we have to take shelter of somebody who is in knowledge of bhakti and take guidance from him. And then, all the lower teachings of the Bhagavad Gita are taken into consideration. Yeah. I'm trying to think, there's a verse which actually says that. Yeah, in the 8th chapter. If the last verse in the 8th chapter, it says that one who follows the path of devotional service is not bereft of the results of all the sacrifices, all of the tapasyas, all the karmic work, jnana. He mentions so many things. It says simply by performing devotional service, we actually attain the results of all these things, which are actually not, there's still desires in the heart. But at the end, we still get Krishna. How is that? How does Krishna do that? When we're sufficiently purified, he gives us what we want materially. And at that point, we don't want it. Just like Dhruva Maharaj, he wanted a planet. He wanted a better position than Lord Brahma. I mean, it's practically impossible by, materialistic calculation. But, when he eventually became purified by chanting the mantra, he didn't want that planet, but Krishna gave it to him. Vishnu gave it to him. Why would he do that? I don't know either. No, it probably, it's like this, that if there's any residual desire there, it completely purifies it. And it helps you to realize how dry that. And we take that benediction and we use it in Krishna's service. We're learning to be detached.
He says that in that chapter, doesn't he, Maharaj? He says, now go and rule this planet in a spirit of devotion. That's what he says, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He, gives him it as devotional service.
Yeah. Yeah, Krishna he'll give us everything if we qualify to use it properly. But we have to become qualified first. Okay, so where did we get to? We had who read last? Jack, was it? Oh no, it was Sita. No, it wasn't. Anyway, we'll go to Suman, Prabhu. Do a lecture read.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Which paragraph?
It starts with, since the omnipotent Lord is situated within the heart. It's the
okay, got it. Thank you, Maharaj. Since the omnipotent Lord is situated within the heart of everyone, he can give directions to his sincere devotees by which they can attain the right path. Such directions are specially offered to the devotee, even if desires something else. As far as others are concerned, God gives sanctions to the doer only at the risk of the doer. But in the case of a devotee, the Lord directs him in such a way that he never acts wrongly. The Srimad Bhagavatam says, Maharaj need help. Sabpadan mulam bhajate priyayasaya tanya bhagavasya harihi priyashe vikramaya pitan kathachid dunati sarvam ridhi sanvishatya. Krishna.
Okay, thank you. So,
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Oh, Vibhu, it was read, didn't it? What have we got now? Sandeep, Prabhu, would you like to carry on?
Yes, Maharaj. The Lord is so kind to the devotee who is fully surrendered to his lotus feet that even though the devotee sometimes fall into the entanglement of Vikrama, acts against the Vedic directions, the Lord at once rectifies such mistakes from within his heart. This is because the devotees are very dear to the Lord. In this mantra of Sri Upanishad, the devotee prays to the Lord to rectify him from within his heart. To err is human. Our conditioned soul is very often opt to commit mistakes, and the only remedial measure to take against such unintentional sins is to give oneself up to the lotus feet of the Lord so that he may guide one of avoid such pitfalls. The Lord takes charge of fully surrendered souls. Thus, all problems are solved simply by surrendering oneself onto the Lord and acting in terms of His directions. Such directions are given to the sincere devotee in two ways. One is by way of the saints, preacher, and spiritual master, and the other is by way of Lord Himself, who resides within the heart of everyone. Thus, the devotee, fully enlightened with Vedic knowledge, is protected in all respects.
Okay, thank you. So this is a gradual process. And it all comes from following the regulative principles. You know, every spiritual process, it won't work unless we follow particular principles. Even the yogis, right at the beginning with the meditation, they have yama and niyama. Yama means things they avoid, and niyama means things that they do. Like ours is the regulative principles, and that's what we give up. That's what we give up, the 4 simple activities. And we chant, and the niyama is that we chant the Hare Krishna mantra. Okay. Let's have a look. Who's not read yet? Anybody not read? Okay, Jai Krishna Prabhu, you read.
Yeah. It's Vedic knowledge, isn't it? Vedic knowledge is transcendental and cannot be understood by mundane educational procedure. One can understand the Vedic mantras only by the grace of the Lord and the spiritual master. Yas yas deva parabhaktir yata deva tata guru. If one takes shelter of a bona fide spiritual master, it is to be understood that he has obtained the grace of the Lord. The Lord appears as a spiritual master for the devotee. Thus the spiritual master, Vedic injunctions, and the Lord himself from within all guide the devotee in full strength. In this way, there is no chance for a devotee to fall again into the mire of material illusion. The devotee, thus protected all around, is sure to reach the ultimate destination of perfection. The entire process is hinted at in this mantra. Srimad Bhagavatam 1 to 17 to 20 explains it further.
Okay. So there's two spiritual masters. The spiritual master without, that's the Guru, and the Lord within, that's Paramatma. So Yashastir Bhaktir Bhagavatir Kinchina Sarver Gunas Tatra Samarshate Sura Harava. That's a different one actually. Forget what it is now. Tasya Devi Para Parotata Devi Para Parot Kastyatita Katya Anartha Prakashanti Mahatma. But you know, by devotional service, we actually develop faith in the person we're following. And when we have full faith, then we can, Krishna from within can give us, you know, the full mercy because we're following a pure devotee's guidance. And so, you know, if we read in the Bhagavad Gita, I forget which verse it is actually. I think it's 7:11. No, 7:10. It talks about Ado Shraddha. In the beginning, there's some faith to associate with devotees. And then by following the 9 processes of devotional service, in 9 different stages, we come to the point of prema, or pure devotional service. And so it's a gradual development of faith. So actually even, you know, they would actually perform sacrifices in previous ages. They would kill an animal, the Brahmins would kill an animal, a horse or even a cow. You know, the Ashvamedha, horse sacrifice, Gomedha, cow sacrifice. And then to test the efficacy, what is it? I can't pronounce the word. Efficacy, is it? To test the efficacy of a particular mantra, they would chant these mantras and bring it back to life. Why? Why are they just actually playing games? No, they, you know, when people saw that, they go, wow, look at that, you know, they'd be impressed. They think, wow, these Vedic mantras really work. And so they would develop faith in people. And it would help them to become pure as well by chanting properly. So there's always a purpose behind everything. And the purpose behind devotional service is to gradually help us to develop full faith. So even if we don't have it now, if we carry on with the process, it will develop. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it says, Shraddha Shabde Vishwas Kahe Sudhiranis Chai Krishna Bhakti Sarva Kama Krita Hai. In other words, one who's got full faith in the orders of the spiritual, in the you know, the process of devotional service. Real faith is when one has full faith and he understands that this is all I need to do. All of the processes are included in this process of bhakti. Okay. Forgot who were next. Who were next? Oh, it was Mayapur, wasn't it? Mayapur Chandradaya.
Yes. Hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord is itself an act of piety. The Lord wants everyone to hear and chant his glories because he is the well-wisher of all living entities. By hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord, one becomes cleansed of all undesirable things, and then one's devotion becomes fixed upon the Lord. At this stage, the devotee acquires the Brahminical qualifications and the effects of the lower modes of nature. Passion and ignorance completely vanish. The devotee becomes fully enlightened by virtue of his devotional service, and thus he comes to know the path of the Lord and the way to attain him. As all doubts diminish, he becomes a pure devotee. Thus
Okay.
ends this is the end.
Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purports to the Isopanisad, the knowledge that brings one nearer to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Upanishad. Upanishad means to bring one close to the Lord by relevant instructions. So these Upanishads are threaded throughout the different Vedic literatures. And therefore, when people are following a particular path, they may be doing it for some ulterior motive, or they may be doing it to, gain something, or without a proper understanding. And so when they come across the Upanishad, which are in the, they'll come across, it's, Prabhupada says, I think I mentioned this earlier, it's like when you read a newspaper, they're like headlines. They bring up a different subject matter. Anyway, you think of something, one headline, you think, oh, that sounds interesting. And so then you start reading it. And so when people do that with the Upanishad, they start to get what they call spiritual transcendental knowledge. So that's the end of this book. Has anybody got anything they want to say? Any questions or comments? Okay, I just read a message from Dawn and Sakran. They had a long drive. I'm assuming they must have gone to Rath Yatra maybe. And so they're feeling the effects.
Can I add, Maharaj, something
Yeah.
to the point? I just remembered that Isopanisad, I don't remember who particularly mentioned it, if it was Srila Prabhupada or who was it, but I heard it particularly for our Vaishnava tradition is important because many times in discussion with Mayavadis don't accept our Vaishnava Shastras, but they accept Upanishads. So Isopanishad is one of them, and that's why it's good to know it, to have arguments in defeating Mayavad philosophy. I don't know if you want to comment on that.
Yeah, when we started this book, we stated that that's the purpose of the Upanishads, is to defeat impersonalist and Mayavad philosophy. It establishes the Supreme Personality of Godhead by logic and argument. The verses, if you read them on their own, they're confusing, but when you read Prabhupada's purports, then we can understand the proper meaning. So that's what this Isopanishad is meant to, to destroy impersonalism. Well, not destroy impersonalism, but at least destroy Mayavad, so that people are not misled. And if as we're reading through it, it mentions this point many, many times, that the Lord walks, but he does not walk. He's very near, but he's far away. He's inside everything, but he's outside everything. It seems to be an impersonal understanding that is all-pervading, is an energy. But then when Prabhupada explains, in a theistic way, we get a different vision of actually understanding the verse properly. Yeah. Anything else? No, Jai Krishna Prabhu.
Did you know Prabhupada writes his commentaries? Why weren't they written like that in the first place? So there's no like way of like confusing yourself with. They're quite kind of like you say, the way they're written is quite vague. Why weren't they more kind of straightforward?
I'll ask you a question now.
Well,
What happens if you meet somebody and they don't want to know what you tell them? You know they're not going to accept what you say, but you still tell them. It just makes them angry, doesn't it?
Yeah, usually. Yeah.
It just agitates them.
Yeah.
And then they won't listen to anything you've got to say. So, these books are presented so that in the translation, all classes of men can read it from their perspective. And therefore, when the pure devotee explains in a theistic way, they get the proper understanding. And, I don't know whether they do. They will do that. They'll explain the Upanishads in an impersonal way if you're an impersonalist. And, somebody who's making spiritual advancement, he's come to the impersonal platform, he'll feel satisfied with that. But, as he goes on in life, he'll realize that this impersonal understanding is not actually making me happy. So he may come to the point where he wants to hear, about the personal side, he'll start to inquire further. And then, the spiritual master can interpret the actual text in the Vaishnava way, which is the proper way, what it's actually meant. This is what Krishna is speaking about. It's explaining the books as they are. Like Bhagavad Gita is called as it is. But there's many Bhagavad Gitas which, they commented upon as if, the absolute truth is impersonal. So Krishna leaves that gap. He doesn't interfere with our independence. That's another reason that if you want to believe it that way, you can do. It's up to you. And it's not that it's not that we're not warned. We're actually given the opportunity to make a choice of accepting Krishna's or accepting the Lord or rejecting him. But if we actually reject, and we carry on with that vein of thinking and we become stubborn, he's got no alternative but to, give us an opportunity to cultivate that,
I suppose that's why there's such emphasis in kind of Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita to hear Shastra from a spiritual master or a bona fide spiritual master, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, so thank you, everybody. And all the best in your spiritual endeavors.
What shall we do next week, Maharaj?
You can chill out.
No, we'll carry on with another book.
What do you want to do?
What do you think?
I don't know. I mean, what do the devotees think? Usually, when you do these books, these are Bhakti Shastri books.
Mm-hmm.
And, different devotees will do them different ways. But, Isopanisad is a good one to start with because we're establishing the personality of Godhead and the Vedic literatures. So then we can go forward confidently with the rest of the Shastra with a reasonably good understanding. And so, and the nature of instruction is like, it's pretty direct. Once you become a devotee, then you can follow next